Good morning, welcome. My name is Annette Felucci. I'm the head of events at Health Tech Copenhagen, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the next hour and a half, where we will be taking a deep dive into France's PECAN initiative and access and opportunities for Danish Nordic health tech startups in the French market, together with the Embassy of Denmark in Paris and the Trade Council. We have a busy program, so let's get to it. But a few practicalities before we start. This meeting is recorded, and we will share the presentations with you after the meeting. We have a chat open, and we would like to ask you to ask any questions during the presentations. We'll also have opportunities for live Q&A, but this way we can pick up any questions you might have on the ways. And with that, a big thank you and welcome to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, the Embassy in Paris, Celia Rosaliska, advisor at the Trade Council, will be presenting from here. Thank you, Celia.
Thank you, Annette. Well, I would like to say welcome to you all, also on the behalf of the Trade Council. I will present briefly the Trade Council first. It will be myself, Celia Rosalica, and Sophie Labrosse. And after that, we will also have Søren Klipper from Selfback presenting. But first, the Trade Council, Sophie and I, we work as consultants in the Trade Council, which is a part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we are situated in the Danish Embassy in Paris. So because of our locations in the export markets, we have a very unique insight into both the Danish ways of doing business, but also into the local markets, as well as all the questions about language and culture. So our task is to help companies with specific questions and requests, but also to make Danish companies aware of unexploited export potential in the area. So we help Danish companies to enter new export markets, but also to help them develop existing export markets. I will briefly introduce the agenda to you. So first of all, we are going to present a little bit about the French healthcare system, and then we will go into the reimbursement of apps. We have separated into two. So first, something about the PECAN, the fast-track procedure, followed by the standard procedure. Then we will have Søren from Selfback presenting Selfback, and we will have some next steps. We will have some useful links for you, and we will have some questions in the end also. So just as Annette, she said, please write any questions that you might have during the presentation in the chat, and after each chapter we will try to stop and see if we can take any questions. So I will give the word to you, Sophie.
Thank you. And then, oh, this is a bit weird, but because then I have to go further. There we are. So I'd like to tell you a bit about France, and especially about the difference between France and Denmark. Of course, it is a big country. It's one of the biggest in Europe, 68 million inhabitants. GDP of almost 2,500 billion euros. But the interesting part is that in the end, Denmark and France use approximately the same share of GDP on health expenditures, so between 10 and 12%. The French system for access to healthcare is, like in Denmark, general and free access for all. So from that perspective, it's quite the same. But the main difference is probably that, indeed, in terms of modernization of the healthcare system, France is still lacking a bit. This is a great opportunity for Danish companies. It actually means that there is lots of opportunities for your products because France has indeed a strategy to really improve their the digitalization of their healthcare system. And Danish products and Denmark in general is actually really well, has a really good reputation. Even the French president, just when he was re-elected last year, in his election speech, referred to the Danish healthcare system in his talk. So today we can really see that people know about Danish products and know that it is good design and good quality. So from that perspective, we definitely have an advantage on the French market. There is a lot of hospitals in France, also a lot of private hospitals. They have not had the same reform as in Denmark in order to close down small hospitals in smaller cities. So there still is really, really a lot of hospitals around, also smaller ones. GPs, it's the same idea as in Denmark. They work from liberal general practice, and they operate usually as a liberal and a little bit at hospitals too. Then if we look at the investments in the French healthcare sector, there is today really a massive try to recover and remodernize the French healthcare sector. So partly with the EU recovery funds, where 6 billion are earmarked for modernization and innovation in the sector, but also with an internal plan for health to improve working conditions and improve salaries and keep the healthcare staff in the sector. And then the France 2030 strategy for national digital health acceleration. And here they have allocated 738 million euros starting since 2022. So what do they want to do with all these important means? Well, it is, of course, to foster the conditions for large-scale deployment of projects that have been testing at different hospitals or other healthcare institutes. It is also to be ready for producing in France. They would also like to develop new territorial structures, so more collaboration between the hospitals and the primary sector, and to form, of course, and train the future generation of practitioners to these new technologies. So one of the parts of this plan was also to start thinking about what can we do to combat this challenge that all the healthcare sectors have in the Western world. Too many people are getting older and older, having more and more chronic diseases, and staff is leaving the sector. So digitalization is one part of the solution. And this particular measure on reimbursement of treatment and telemonitoring apps is part of that. So Celia, you can take over from here.
Yes, so let's go straight into the reimbursement of apps. I would like to start a little bit with the context, and I would especially like to, if you can look at the étape, the lower part of the graphic. As Sophie, she said, for several years, France has worked with the idea of digitalizing and innovating the healthcare sector. And this was also done from 2018 to 2023, where the project ETAP was made with 5 different chronic disease areas. And from 2023, this will be generalized to all digital therapeutic and remote monitoring applications with the PECAN procedure. And all of this is due to new legislation, meaning that France is the third country in Europe to make a procedure for reimbursement of health applications, and especially for making the PECAN fast track process for innovative solutions. So here we have an overview of the fast track procedure prior to the standard reimbursement procedure. And as you see, we have 3 steps in both. As you also might imagine, well, the standard procedure is a little more heavy lifting, if you might say so, compared to the fast track, both in terms of the content of the application and the delay for the answers. And now I will go into more detail. So next slide. The PECAN fast track procedure, early access to reimbursement for digital medical devices. And we will move on to slide 15. So PECAN. The objective of PECAN is to accelerate the reimbursement of therapeutic digital medical devices, DMDs, or remote medical monitoring activities. So the PECAN gives access to 1 year of reimbursement from the French Social Security for solutions that are developed enough. And we will go into the criteria of this, of course, later on. But the PECAN process also allows the manufacturer of a DMD or remote medical monitoring activity to be reimbursed while collecting the last clinical benefits of the solution. The target group is only applications that are considered innovative and that have a therapeutic purpose or allow remote medical monitoring. So the next slide, 16. Here we have a more detailed graphic of the PECAN process, which shows the 3 different steps when applying. And in the first step, we have 3 different procedures at the same time. In France, nothing has to be easy. So the clinical and economical applications goes through the EVATech portal online, and the CNIDIMS and the Ministry for Health and Social Security receives it. And then we have the Digital Health Agency, ANS, which is responsible for the technical compliance part. Then we have step 2, it is the evaluation. And we have step 3, which is the decision. And now I'm moving on to the next slide to give you more details. So we have the requirements for starting the application procedure.
Celia, I think you just muted yourself.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Should I take over the slide then? Yes, all right.
I do not know what is happening with our slide right now, sorry.
Okay, I'll go over this one again. So the requirements before starting the process is that your solution has to be CE marked and it has to be presumed as innovative. And how do you know if your solution is innovative? It has to be likely to bring progress in the organization of care without altering the quality of care. And it has to show enough clinical benefit or progress in the organization of care. And this would be based on what is existing at the moment when you apply. Then it should be undergoing studies, and it should be presumed to provide enough data to be able to apply for this standard procedure afterwards. So the objective is to either go to the list of products and services qualifying for reimbursement, called the LPPR list, and this should take 6 months after receiving PECAN, or the list of medical telemonitoring activities called the LATM list, and this should be done within 9 months. Moving on to the next slide. So who can apply? Well, the company can apply for the PECAN process, but also a representative, for example, a consultant could apply, or if you have a distributor in France, could also apply. Well, you just have to specify if you are applying for yourself, or if it is someone else that is applying on your behalf. You also have to note that the application has to be in French, except from any material, any bibliographic material. This can, of course, be in English, as with any other clinical studies. So I'm moving on to slide number 19. So now we're going into the step 1 of the PECAN process, which is the certificate and the technical compliance. This is done through the ANS. And of course, your solution has to be compliant with any GDPR rules and with the security reference systems according to the French law. Then you have to have a certificate, which is done through the Convergence, or we call it in French, Convergence platform at the ANS website, and you will find the link in this PowerPoint that you will have afterwards. So I'm moving on to the next slide, where you have the step-by-step of the certificate of compliance, and I'm not going to go into details with this slide, but when you need it, you will have it here. I'm moving on to the next, number 21. Well, you have the possibility to meet twice with the health authorities in France. You can have a first meeting very, very early in your process, where you can discuss if your solution could be or could not be taken into consideration to the PECAN. And then you can have a second meeting just before you apply on the Evatec platform to discuss if your solution is advanced enough in for example, in your clinical studies, if you have all that is required to apply, etc. And you have the link to ask for these meetings in the PowerPoint. So slide number 22. Here you find all that is required to apply on the Evatec platform. And you have several links that will be very useful for you when you apply. You should be aware that if your solution is a system of several DMDs, each DMD must declare their specifications. Slide number 23. We have now the step 2 of the PECAN process. So when you have applied, your application is assessed by the CNIDIMS. And in this slide, you find all sort of information about the delays, for example, 60 days for the evaluation, what you should do in case there is not enough information in your application after all, what you should do, and also what you should do if you have a positive decision from the Commission or if you have a negative from the Commission. I would just like to stress one thing in this slide, and that is that you might not get the PECAN process, but this does not mean that you could not have the standard reimbursement. because PECAN, for the PECAN application, you have to have an innovative solution, but this is not the same for the standard procedure. So do not fear if you have a negative response. You might get reimbursement anyway, but you have to take the standard procedure instead. Slide number 24. When you have applied and you have had a positive answer from the commission, they will also give you all sorts of recommendations for your solution. And I will not go into detail with this one either, because it will depend a lot on your solution and the specificities of your solution. Slide 25. Pricing. So I'm sure that you are all excited to know what you could get out of the PECAN procedure. It is quite complicated, but I have tried to make it a bit easier. So it depends on the number of patients that will be using the application, but it also depends on the impact that it would have on the patients. So normally, I hope if we click one more time, we will have a calculation which shows an example. So this is an official example which has been given in the legislation. So if you have a remote monitoring activity, if you have 21,000 patients and it is considered as of organizational interest, you should receive per patient 40 euros and 79 cents. Oh, it is another thing for we go to the next slide now, 26. Another important information is that the Social Security will only cover 60%. That means that 40% of the solution should be paid by the patient. So often patients, or in general in France, we have a private insurance that covers the rest, but it will very much depend on each insurance. To the healthcare professionals, there will also be a fee depending on if it is required for a nurse or for a doctor to do the follow-up and do the prescription of the solution. So for example, a nurse, it would be 11 euros per month, or for a doctor, it would be 28. Moving on to the next slide, 27. Well, if you have a therapeutic DMD, we actually do not have any information about the reimbursement yet. It has not been done. So unfortunately, we do not have any information on this one at the moment, but we hope to have that soon.
But we know that it's going to be reimbursed.
Yeah, yes, it is going to be reimbursed, but we don't know how much, and we do not know how it will be calculated at the moment. We do not know if it will be like the telemonitoring or not. Well, this was the PECAN part. I will check if we have any questions in the chat, maybe concerning this.
Shall I read the questions for you, Celia? Is that easy?
Okay, yes, please.
So one question is, do you have a time frame to when legislation on reimbursement will be announced? So we know that it has to be before the 1st of July. So normally in 10 days. That should be the... And then the next question is, do we apply once and just renew it year after year, or do we need to apply every year as it offers only a 1-year reimbursement?
Well, the PECAN is only up to 1 year, and after 1 year, you have to ask for this standard procedure that Sophie she will present just in a few minutes. So PECAN is only 1 year.
And the standard procedure is then valid for 5 years, and so you will have to renew every 5 years after that. So the next question is, does this scheme require local clinical data or data from Danish trials can be used in the application?
Well, it is
You can use Danish clinical trial data. It doesn't have to be from France.
No, and it doesn't have to be in French either. So,
yeah.
Okay, that was it, Sophie, right?
Yeah,
the questions?
I think so.
All right,
for the
then
questions
I
for
will
now.
give the word to you then to talk about the standard procedure.
So we will move to slide 28 and 29, actually almost right away, because indeed PECAN is there to come easier and quicker to market when you're developing a telemonitoring device or a therapeutic medical device. So you can actually ask for reimbursement even if you're still getting results from the last clinical data. But after that, you'll have to apply for standard reimbursement. And actually, when you apply for PECAN, you engage yourself that you will apply for standard reimbursement. I don't think they have set a fee yet for if you do not apply, but that's the objective, that everybody who has gone through PECAN will apply for standard reimbursement afterwards. So the standard reimbursement is different depending on if you're applying for a remote monitoring activity or for a therapeutic DMD. So for the remote monitoring activity, they have made this new list that will give the right to reimbursement, the LATM list. And for the therapeutic DMDs, it's actually an inscription on the already existing list for normal medical devices. And then there is a difference in applying in a brand name or in a generic name, meaning that for the remote monitoring activity, the ETAP program that Celia mentioned before, that has been running from 2018 till now, has already gotten some activity approved and listed on the LATM as a test, as a pilot. And that means that if your device, remote monitoring activity, has the same medical benefit and the same clinical organization as one of these, you can apply in a generic name and the procedure will be shorter and easier. However, if you have something that is outside of these test areas, then you will apply in a brand name and will have to go through the standard procedure and review. So if we go to slide number 30, here you can see the evaluation time. So indeed, if you're applying with a generic device, then if you can see that the evaluation takes maximum 70 days compared to the brand name 90 days. And in the steps that you have to go through, you can see that it will be the validation of compliance with the technical specifications of the generic line. So they will just compare your product to the already existing solution instead of you bringing up all the new evidence, clinical and organizational and technical for your device. We go to slide 31. Here is some content on the different applications. We have also put down on the slide the link to the instructions for the platform in French and in English, so you can actually check it out yourself. So the service that is responsible for PECAN and for the standard procedure is actually it's both in the HIS, so the health authorities, and they are working on getting the guides also for PECAN in English, but right now it's only in French. even if the guide is in English, you still have to apply in French. But it gives you at least the basic information in a maybe in a more easy manner. If we go to slide 32, then you have indeed some information again about the assessment. So first, the HAS has given you an assessment in 70 or 90 days. And then the next part is actually assessment by the Ministry of Health, and who will validate that you can come on the list of reimbursed products. Pricing, next step, it will be a negotiation with the Economic Committee for Health Products. It's based on clinical efficiency and its improvement compared to other existing treatments. They're expressed in two grades, SMR and ASMR. That the Committee for Health Products will get. They will know if the health authorities think that your solution gives a major improvement compared to other existing treatments, or a non-existing, or only a moderate improvement. And this will give you your position in your negotiation afterwards. Of course, if you've gone through PECAN, you already have a price. We actually don't really know if you will continue the same price afterwards, or if you can renegotiate it. But this is the standard procedure. If you have not gone through PECAN, you will negotiate with the Committee for Health Products based on how significant your the improvement is that comes with your application. I think that was all for my part. Is there any questions on the standard procedure from your side? Then you can write them in the chat. While Søren is preparing for giving you his part of the story in France. But I mean, indeed, as it is approximately the same procedure as PECAN, just more elaborate. Yeah, there is not so much of a difference to expect. I can see no other questions in the chat. Yeah, there is one. For the ASMR evaluation, do we need to add health economic reports of some kind? Yes, indeed, the ASMR evaluation is based both on clinical data, on health economic data, and on organizational data. Yeah, those three aspects will be involved. All right. Søren, I guess it will be your turn.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know who's controlling the slideshow, but can you please skip to the next?
That's me, Søren. There you go.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Annette. So yeah, my name is Søren, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Selfback. And just for those of you who might not have heard of us so far, I mean, we are a digital therapeutic app. We have a back pain app that helps people with back pain learn to self-manage. And this is done in an AI supported architecture. And what is in our case something unique is that we have clinical evidence for our solution. So our business model is based on these reimbursement opportunities that exist in different markets. Depending on the markets, they can be private or public. So, but this is the markets that we are targeting. So for that reason, we are interested in France. When the PECAN came about, it was super interesting for us, and we engaged in the investigation of our opportunities there. Can you switch to the next one, please, Annette? So the first thing we did is to try and understand, okay, what are the requirements that are enabling us to become eventually reimbursed in the French system. We went on then to try and compare to what we have and try to work out what is the gaps that we have, and what potential things would be preventing us from actually getting reimbursement. So in our case, we could quite easily see that we would most likely qualify for this PECAN because we have a CE marked app. We have clinical evidence. We are definitely novel. So we are ticking a lot of the boxes, but we also know that there are a few places where we thought we're missing something. This is, for example, health economic data based on French patients, French cost levels, and the French healthcare system. We don't have that at the moment. But that's exactly what the PECAN actually allows us to. So this was, I mean, it's a gap, but it's something that is manageable. So what we went on to do here is actually to get help from the embassy also. We did a session with them. They have and a little disclosure here. I used to work with the Trade Council, so I might be slightly biased here when I speak about some of the services, but just full disclosure here, so you know. But they have a product that they call Scope Your Business Model. It is actually targeted for small and medium-sized enterprises like us. So we engaged in this conversation with the embassy and went through this process. And there are a few things that we, could uncover also in that process that helped us understand more than just about the reimbursement. And some of the things, I guess, most of you, if you're in the same line of business, will recognize also as potential barriers to the French market. For example, we could identify we don't have a brand recognition in the market. That would certainly be something that most of us have in common, I think. We also know that for the reimbursement process to work, it's a big deal to get the doctors involved to actually write out prescriptions eventually on something that can be reimbursed. That is the main problem in Germany, actually, in the DiGA process, for example. So we knew that was kind of an important factor. And also, as I mentioned, the health economic analysis, we don't have it today, but we would need someone who could help us create such a data set and work out the analysis so we could submit that to the PECAN process. So can you please switch to the next one? In our case, it actually happened so that we found a local partner in France. Ramsay Santé is the largest French healthcare provider organization. They're very interested in digital innovation. They heard about the PECAN already. We are having a product but need a brand name in the French market. Here was an obvious opportunity to combine this so we can actually go in the French market as a co-branded solution together with Ramsay Santé. So that ticked one of the boxes that we had identified as a gap. The second one, having doctors to prescribe our app. Well, there are a few thousand doctors employed in Ramsay Santé, so I feel pretty confident that we'll find a doctor who can write out a prescription on Selfback eventually when we get approved. So we can tick that second box. And the third box we had about the health economic analysis. With Ramsay Santé, we can work out this analysis based on the real figures from the French healthcare system. And in this way, we will produce a very strong document to be submitted to our PECAN process. The next one, please. So our recommendations based on our admittedly limited experience so far, because we've not concluded the whole process, and we must remember that PECAN is a very, very new phenomenon in France also. So this is our learning so far. But so far we can say we found it tremendously beneficial to have a good friend in France that helps us out understanding the local circumstances. I can definitely point to the embassy here and recommend working with the team that's also present here today. We can also say that there are, for obvious reasons, limitations to how far you can come with the embassy, for example, because there will be certain things that the embassy does extremely well, that they're the only ones actually that I can think of can do. but there are also limitations to how deep they can go into different, specific matters, because there are simply limitations in what they're allowed to do and what they can do for practical reasons. And there potentially a local partner can take over and go more in depth with you. So make sure that you don't try to, have too high expectations that are unrealistic to what the embassy can do, but have realistic expectations to what they can help you with. And they will be very clear on what they can and cannot do. But just so you know, there are some limits eventually, and you will have to respect that, that this is the way it works. And then the last thing, you need to commit to the job, because I think you could see already in the overview we saw so far, it's not trivial. There's going to be a lot of work involved in going through an application, first PECAN, then moving on to second stage application. There will be a need for dedicated resources. There will be a need for a fully localized version of your software. So for sure, there is a need to commit to the job and commit the resources also to it. But again, here I think that the embassy has network available in France that can also help you identify those who can potentially help you out, and with the gaps that you will identify in your processes, most likely be able to advise you to work with one or the other entity that can help you bridge over the gaps and become market ready for France. So yeah, this is in short our take on it. As I said, slightly biased, but I recommend you to hook up with the guys from the embassy. They've been a tremendous help to us. Any questions at this point?
Let's give a few seconds if anyone wants to type a question to the chat. So, Anna, when it came to collaborating with Ramzi Sonte, what would you say in a collaboration like this? What is the most important thing for a startup to remember?
Yeah, be really mindful that a large organization like Ramzi Sonte does not move at the same speed as you. So as a startup, we are very nimble and agile, and we are impatient by nature. Not to say that they are not ambitious or anything, but it just takes longer time in the bigger organizations, and you need to have a realistic expectation there, and make sure you get that sorted out right from the beginning, that you adjust to the circumstances in this way, and tune in on the partner's ability, because you might have a different, definitely on time, have a different view on things.
And I actually have one more question. I have the microphone,
Yeah.
so I can just take over here. No, but you have mentioned DIGA as well, and I know that you have quite a good overview of the German system as well. Could you maybe tell us a little more about the differences and the similarities between the two? How do you think the French PECAN system compares to DIGA?
Yeah, so I think in Germany, actually, I think there's some friction points in the DIGA, and these are judging not from our own experience, but from the observations that we've done, because we actually shied away from applying for DIGA for the same reasons. But what I see that in Germany is that you have these private health insurance companies, I think there are 98 of them, who actually are obliged to pick up the bill for the DIGAs. That's by law, they need to pay. And they are, for understandable reasons, not too happy about having a law that dictates them to pay for something they had no say in. So there are these friction points, and especially I don't like that friction between the payer entity and the product provider. And I heard about certain cases where they refuse to reimburse for some of the applications, even if they were DIGA approved. And for me as a CEO of a company, I wouldn't like that to happen, because all the investment into a DIGA and then not being paid at the end, that would be kind of a catastrophe. And I think what France has done here is to do a different setup, where you actually have and it's more like the unified model we know from Denmark. So you can go into a procedure where you have the approval done by the authorities, and then also you get paid by the French authority. So there's a one-payer contact afterwards that is aligned with the approval process and the lawmaking. So I have, in this way, hope, at least, again, it remains to be seen, but I have a hope that there's less friction and more alignment in the French system, and that will actually hopefully enable us to have a smoother process as a digital therapeutic vendor that goes into the market.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions. These seem to be more for Celia and Sophie. I'm thinking before we go into generic questions, Celia, there's a last slide left with next steps, if I am not mistaken. Would you want to go through that, and then we can do an open Q&A?
Yeah, of course. We'll take the slide number 39 then. Well, as Søren, he said, in the Trade Council, we can assist companies with many different things. We can do partner searches, we can do competition analysis, etc. That is individually on each company. But we also do joint programs, and we would very much like to make joint programs for companies that are in the same situation. And therefore, we are about to make this joint promotion program, which would be in the fall. We would need at least 4 companies to participate, and what it would be about would very much depend also on your needs. So if you are interested in working with us and know more about all of this, you can help us make the program according to your needs. So contact us as soon as possible if you would like to participate, as we also have limited capacity, of course. So this is just a teaser. Do not hesitate to reach out to us if you are interested.
Great, and this information will also be sent out to everyone together with the rest of the slides. Shall we go into questions then? We have a question. Does reimbursement cover hybrid models, example DTX and human coaching?
Yes. So the system is based on an operator fee also for the doctor or the nurse who will follow up with the use of the device. So as long as it is not a different person from the doctor who is prescribing, that is foreseen in the system. I don't know about anything else though. But we can ask the question if you were thinking about having a different coach than the prescriber, then we can ask and see if that is possible.
Thank you. And then, are there different technical requirements between Germany and France? Søren,
Here,
maybe
I have no idea. Yeah, I think it's maybe Søren who.
Yeah, I'm thinking,
who
Søren,
might
maybe
know.
you have a point?
Yeah, for sure there are. There will be some of the things that could be similar, like, for example, having a CE certificate. But there are, for the technical interoperability part of being able to integrate and have this interoperability into the French system, there are specific requirements. And at this point, I can't really say more about it because we're still also investigating some of the details of that. But there are for sure differences that needs to be taken into account.
And Søren, I was wondering if the German system also has both therapeutic apps and telemonitoring. I was wondering if the telemonitoring is not included, isn't it?
It's not exactly the same there because a few things are different in the French system. Actually, you have a wider scope in France. Yeah. So in Germany, it's only low-risk devices, if I'm not mistaken, only class 2B. But in France, it's actually extended, so you can have a wider range of other classifications included also. And then there's also this telemonitoring Germany has made some changes in their telemonitoring laws recently, and it led, for example, the Swedish company Kry to step out of Germany because they couldn't operate under the new laws of telehealth in Germany. So I'm not making myself an expert on the German laws. I just know that they're for sure different than what you see in France. And it seems to me that the French have learned from Germany's experience and try to actually make it better. So, and that's why I may be slightly bullish here about France, but I really think that they have done a good job to try and learn from some of the, if not mistakes, then at least friction points in the German system and try to improve on that in the PECAN.
Any other questions? We are moving into an open Q&A now, so you're also welcome to just raise your hand and ask it on camera if you prefer that to typing. No more questions? We've been through a lot of information. Meanwhile, Celia, would you like to maybe say something about the links that we will be sending out? What information is it that we're sharing afterwards?
Yes, you will find a slide that is called useful links, where yes, we are still sorry that most of it will be in French because we do not have it in English yet. But you actually have the platform that's called Genius, which is dedicated to the PECAN process, which is in English and in French, where you will find a lot of useful information also, and where it is very well explained also what the different parts of this system, what they are responsible for example, who are the ANS and who are the HAS, etc., and what are they going to do and what role are they going to play in the different part of the process. So I really encourage you all to go and just have a look at least at the Genius platform, because it is very well made and very useful.
Great, thank you. Any questions that you're sitting and burning with? If not, that we're going to be quick and efficient today. You can, of course, always also reach out to Celia, Sophie, myself, and Søren for any questions you might come up afterwards, after this webinar. As mentioned, we're sending all the information out. But if no questions, no comments, then I think we can wrap up for today. Let's do that. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining on this webinar on France's PECAN initiative and access to the French market. It has been a pleasure. And we hope to see you at similar webinars. And remember to contact Celia if you are interested in joining a program for entering the French market. That's a thank you from me, Celia. Any last words?
Thank you very much, to all of you for participating, and really do not hesitate to reach out to us, to me, to Sophie, or to Søren if you have any questions or you need any advice to move on. It is we would very much like to see a lot of Danish companies going into this process and succeed and be a part of the initiative and of the French healthcare system. Thank you so much.